Herbal Medicine podcast. I'm your host, David. Kristin is off this week, but you can expect a new episode with the two of us here in the next couple weeks. We're going to be doing sleep and seasonal affective disorder. So it'll be a typical podcast that we do. We've decided to make our podcast a little bit more unique. Rather than just having the same 1 hour conversation between Chris and I, we want to do something different. So you can expect those 1 hour conversations, once or twice a month from us, where we go over conditions, we go over herbs, the functional herbal medicine approach. Then you can expect these individual podcasts where something like I'm doing today, and also from Kristin where she'll be doing topics she's interested in, and I will be doing topics I'm interested in, just to branch out. These might not be as long as our 1 hour podcast, maybe they are. And then lastly, we want to bring in some interviews of practitioners in our community. There's so many amazing practitioners, and we want to spread their message, spread their word, and then also kind of get out of the continuous monotonous aspect of just functional herbal medicine. We want to share all the modalities of holistic medicine. So today, I will be doing an introduction to herbal medicine with children. This is by no means a course or an exact how-to. It's just to introduce people to the idea. It's something that's been on my list to do with the Functional Herbal Medicine podcast. It came up in a conversation last week. And so, today's the day I'm going to be presenting it. I will cover a little bit about safety, efficacy, dosage, some common conditions we use these herbs for children, and then I will go over a few different herbs that I commonly use with children. This will be more of a clinical perspective in the sense of like what I've seen and done here at the dispensary at Errant Empire, and conversations that I've had with people outside. It's not by any means a course type material. I'm not going to be teaching dosage. I'm not going to be teaching formulation. This is just to introduce the idea. So let's get started. So why choose herbs for children? I wanted to start this podcast with a question. Quite common in the dispensary to have new parents, parents that have had children for a few years but new to the herbal medicine world come in and kind of cautious with what they're putting in their children's bodies, which makes complete sense, especially if there's something they don't know. I always refer back to this story. This predates 2020. This is 2019, 2018. I was still in college, and I was at the dentist, and quite often at the dentist, the doctor will ask you a question and then stick the tools in your mouth, and you kind of have this garbled answer. In this scenario, the doctor and the assistant were talking to each other while they're working on me, which is also quite common. And the assistant was saying that her daughter is sick again and has a cough and is really uncomfortable and not sleeping well. She said that she took her daughter to the doctor, and the doctor said, you're just going to have to wait it out and just let her body clear it out. The cough medicines that are at the over-the-counter type medicines are just too strong for children her age. And I think her daughter was around 3-ish. And so the mom was like, I wish there was something I could do. I wish I could help her. That's how I feel. I feel that I can't do anything. And as a herbalist, I'm kind of laying there and I'm thinking but there is something you can do. There is herbs. There's stuff that clears it out. Supplements, I'm on the fence with supplements. I think there's some good ones. I think there's some that are kind of blown out of perspective that don't do as they say. But herbs, I'm a herbalist. So I'm laying there as a student of herbal medicine, there is something you could do. I also have children myself. I have a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And, it didn't feel right at the time to interject and say, oh, but there is something you can do. You can do this. But it's a story that I hold on to because it reminds me that I kind of live in this bubble where I think all parents think like me, where I think they know about all these resources and these options, when in reality they're kind of just in the dark. And I have to remember that that herbal medicine is growing, it's spreading, but at the same time, it's not everywhere all the time. So I use that story quite often because it's quite common. And I've listed a few things here that I cover with parents as they come into the dispensary and they talk about herbs. I talk about safety and the strength and what kind of results to expect and how to gauge results. And then on the other side, I'll go over, what we use herbs for children. So safety, so there's that term that goes around, safe and effective, talismanic. I use it specifically with herbs because they are safe and they are effective. Quite often people approach herbs for children or herbs for people in general. They give it this this huge range, but no gray area. They have the polarities, the extremes. They either think herbs are really dangerous and they're going to cause harm, or they don't do anything at all. It's never this middle area. And I tend to be more of a cautious herbalist. I know contraindications, I know medications, pharmaceuticals. So I tend to cross my T's and dot my I's when I'm doing my formulations for everybody, especially children. And but I also know herbs are safe when used properly, and it is the same with children. We use everything that we use for adults, almost everything, and that's kind of the main point, is to know your herbs when it comes to safety, and then know your dosage. We'll talk about dosage here in a few minutes, but yeah, there are herbs that are really strong that if a client wants to use herbs rather than the conventional route, we can use with children. So yeah, I would say safe and effective when it comes to safety for children. The strength. So herbs have this amphoteric type property. Amphoteric we tend to use for plants that do both things. So we have herbs that will actually staunch bleeding and stop bleeding. And then we have herbs that will promote bleeding. And they do the same thing, but they do what's necessary at the time. I'm using amphoteric in the sense that they're super safe, but super strong at the same time. We aren't too concerned about the plants we use, especially for children, that they're so strong that they're going to make the child even more ill. But we know that they're going to produce results as well. That's what I mean by strength. These constituents, when used and applied properly, will produce the results that we're looking for. And I'll use a cough, for example, here, and the strength of herbs for a cough. Thyme is an amazing, strong herb, also very safe for children, but it can be used at the wrong time. Thymus vulgaris, the plant we use, is a volatile, rich plant, and it actually brings up like stuck, sticky mucus cough. So it's deep coughs in the lungs. It'll help break that up and help clear it out as an expectorant. But if somebody has a dry cough, it's only going to aggravate the dry cough. So in a dry cough where there's no deep stuck mucus and we just have that dry throat that's irritated and easily spasmodic, we would use something like mullein or marshmallow leaf in those regards. And so that will be one area that people will be like, oh, I used herbs and it just made my cough so much worse. It's dangerous. And it might have just been the wrong herb at the wrong time. So we have really strong herbs like thyme that go deep in the lungs and pull stuff out. And then we have on another spectrum of strong mullein, which is a demulcent expectorant. It's going to soothe the dryness, but also encourage any type of mucus that's being produced to clear out. So strength of herbs. We have really strong restricted herbs that we tend not to use with children. I can think of one example of one of those herbs that we would use topically and then also internally with another. But yeah, it's hit or miss. It's certain areas where we would or would not use those. That is the consultation piece. That is the over-the-counter remedies we do here at the dispensary. And then you have the full in-depth consultations with herbal practitioners. But we know how to formulate properly and what's necessary for children where they're at. And then the type of results we see. As I go through the list next to results, I will kind of share my clinical experience with those. But the results tend to be quite amazing with children. Practitioners, my teachers, taught us that children and animals tend to respond really well to herbal medicine. It's those average adults that tend to be a little bit more stuck in their ways, and potentially even like their minds getting in the way of the medicine doing their work. But children and animals seem to respond really well. And I'll use, I think it's Paul Stamets, or it might be Terence McKenna, but it might be Terence McKenna. He was talking about psychoactive plant medicine, specifically like mushrooms, ayahuasca. But the point is, these plants have an action on our body because we have a receptor to receive that constituent. So if we didn't have a receptor, if we didn't have the receptors for the psychoactive constituent in psilocybin mushrooms, then we wouldn't have the response that we have. And the same with mescaline and San Pedro and DMT and ayahuasca. So the reason we respond and have an experience with that plant medicine and major healing with those medicines is because our body has the ability to understand and respond to that medicine. It's the same with herbs. It's kind of like we've evolved over time with plants for our body to receive certain plants and for our body to not receive certain plants, because there are plants that are actually very toxic to us because we have no way of breaking them down, or the constituents are just toxic in general. So the herbal medicines we use in the Western herbal dispensary, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, this is a tradition that's been passed down, and all three of those traditions for thousands of years. This is tried and true clinical traditional medicine that science is now just reaffirming is effective. And it's because our bodies have evolved to receive this type of medicine. These are some of the conditions that I've actually worked with children on in the dispensary in my clinical practice. Cold and flu, naturally, we do preventative stuff and stuff for while the children are sick, and then also post-viral clearance. That's another topic that's kind of new to people in general, but also with children, is helping the body, facilitating the body, clearing out the virus after we're done, also clearing out that mucus. There could be a cough for good 14 days after a cold or a flu, and you can speed that process up through supporting detoxification and using expectorants to pull out that mucus. I've worked with children that have severe eczema, children that have asthma and allergies. That's a triad, so they all are kind of the same type of immune response, all a type of allergy response. But yeah, I've had some amazing success with eczema in children. And we've used some of the stronger herbs. So that one of the herbs that I would say is stronger would be Chinese skullcap. It's a bitter herb. Its taste is very strong. I love it, but getting children to drink it might be a little bit harder. For this specific client, it was a challenge. But once the medicine started working, the child was more apt to take it. But yeah, Chinese skullcap was amazing for this client's eczema. We've used it for digestive support, so diarrhea, constipation. It helps in both areas, and growing pains. So this one's pretty common in my house. My son gets growing pains, and so we use topicals for this specific situation rather than internal herbs. I already mentioned boost immunity, general macro and micronutrient intake. So yeah, we have herbs that tend to be a little bit higher in those minerals and vitamins. They're not like food source grade mineral rich, but they're definitely higher. So if you want to get that underlying nutrient into a child, using nettles or oat straw, super high in vitamins and minerals that you can just kind of incorporate into a drink every day to help support nutrition. Stress and anxiety is a quite common one in children and adults, but yeah, we have amazing gentles. I have one of the herbs actually coming up ahead that we'll talk about that I use quite often with children. And then sleep support. This can be the acute support just to help rest and relax, especially during a cold. You can use herbs to help just relax the child, help them relax into bed, feel a little bit more comfortable. And then there's like herbs that you can use throughout the day that help support energy, but also help facilitate that sleep-wake cycle. We'll also get into the sleep-wake cycle a little bit further in that podcast Kristin and I are going to do together. So the first herb that I decided to use in this presentation is Echinacea, and it's because it's so common and it's so broad in our approach. I use Echinacea to boost the immune system prior to sickness. We use it during sickness to help clear out the cold. And it's also one of the main ones we use in that triad of asthma, allergies, and eczema. Ultimately, it has an immune modulating effect. It doesn't just boost the immune system. It can help kind of down-regulate or put the immune system in check, for example, in like an allergy or eczema. We have parents, personally myself, we have parents come back for cold and flu blends for their children because it works. It's something that they can do to help make their child feel more comfortable. Help facilitate the mucus clearing out. On this note, I don't want to advocate for using herbs to break fevers. I know we've talked about this in other podcasts, but fever is a good thing, and it's about knowing your fever. Maybe we can do a podcast on just fevers in general, but knowing when a fever is no longer safe, when you need to seek some sort of remedy to for sure break that fever, or when to go to the hospital. But ultimately, the threshold is a lot higher than we kind of think. And of course, we're the parents in the middle of all this. We're watching our child uncomfortable, crying, sick, and we want to solve the problem. However, there's lots of evidence that by breaking a fever regularly actually weakens the immune system and the immune response, which then allows this virus to potentially get deeper, never fully get cleared out, or never build up a full immune response so that you build up that actual immunity to the virus. So yeah, I don't even use herbs that way. I have in the past with my family, when the fever's kind of gotten out of hand, we've done like baths with herbs and internal teas. But ultimately the fever's never really gotten to that point where it just doesn't keep itself in check. So I'll keep a note of that to do a podcast. Or if you have any questions about fevers, I love talking about fevers. So does Kristin, because we know that it's a healthy immune response. So some herbs that we might blend with Echinacea, especially in like the cold, sick setting, would be like elderberry, lemon balm. We might use plantain as a mucous membrane tonic, and hyssop to help clear out that mucus, thyme as well. The other herbs on this list, so like Chinese skullcap, calendula, burdock, nettles, heartsease, these are ones that I use in more of that eczema, asthma, allergy type response. So a lot of those are depuratives or alteratives. And then Chinese skullcap, it helps with histamine specifically. And so that's where we would use Chinese skullcap and those other herbs. So these are herbs in different blends. Again, we don't do a one-size-fits-all. My focus is custom herbal medicine, because every condition presents differently, every person responds differently to every type of situation. So yeah, we do custom medicine. That is going to be the future of medicine, in my opinion. This is the Nervine, the nervous system support that I tend to use quite often with children. It's an amazing, relaxing herb, also very gentle. We eat oats. Probably most of us eat oats every single day. And then I gave a little bit of example of the Western energetic model. So if people are familiar with the holistic realm, traditional Chinese medicine, they have their energetic diagnosis that they give. And, you'll liver qi stagnation or kidney yin deficiency. These are just some examples. That's their energetic description of what's happening in the body. And their model goes across the spectrum. So kidney yin deficiency has an effect on the emotional body, the spiritual body, and then also the physical body. So they use herbs and acupuncture to approach specific conditions that way. The Western model, we have our 6 tissue states. Specifically, oat straw and milky oats is for the constricted or atrophic tissue states. So constriction is like tension. That's kind of like when the body tightens up. So picture the nervous system when somebody's having anxiety. their body is going into this tense state. Stressed, the muscles get tighter, digestion can get tighter, constipation can be common. So I would use milky oats in this regard as a gentle nervine for the constricted tissue state. It's high in B vitamins. It's also very relaxing to the nervous system, also very softening to the nervous system, I would say. Specifically with children, I've used it for stress and worry, in post-viral recovery. So in post-viral situations, somebody's depleted. The body just kind of went through this battle inside of itself. The immune system was upregulated. There's stress responses that take place, and then post-viral, the way our world's set up is get back to work, get back to school, daycare, whatever it is. We get better and then we just go back to it. But there's something to be said about convalescence, which we've done a podcast on, and rest. And milky oats helps facilitate that. It helps just soften the nervous system after it's just gone through this, little battle. We use it for sleep issues as well. And then, like I mentioned, for additional vitamins and minerals. Some other herbal blends, formulations that I might use with milky oats. Most of those are all nervines. The top two, astragalus and ashwagandha, those are adaptogens. So I tend to use those boosting the immune system before, and then also post-viral, after the body's kind of cleared out the virus and it's kind of cleared, we'll use astragalus and other herbs to re-prime the immune system, rebuild that energy. Quite often there's fatigue after a strong cold. So the top two are adaptogens we might use, and then the rest, lemon balm, wood betony, verbena, skullcap, California poppy, those are all nervines, and valerian's a sedative and an anxiolytic, so it stops anxiety. We might use any one of those. I might use milky oats by itself. We tend to formulate, but we can use it by itself as well, just something that's an additional support for the child. Also very gentle. And then the third herb I brought out today is Angelica, archangelica. This one I would use in a more, what's the right word? In a way that is, I would ask a few more questions before I recommend Angelica, archangelica. But I came across this in my studies at college. When I had my baby, my son was, 1 or 2. I was talking with one of my teachers, my mentors, asking him about what should I do, and one of the herbs that he recommended was Angelica, archangelica. This is because Angelica it's a warming bitter, so it moves digestion. When you're sick, you have this virus build up, your body tends to get a little constipated. Sometimes it can be diarrhea, but sometimes it gets constipated, and you want to move that liver. You want to help clear out this virus. But it's also a warming expectorant as well. So that lingering cough that might be in there, it goes to the lungs, it moves blood to the lungs, and then it also brings out that cough. So it has this dual action in post-viral recovery that is sometimes necessary. It's also not always appropriate. That warming bitter can be too strong for children. It can be too heating if the child already has a hotness, a heatness to them. I might use more of a cooling bitter to move the liver, and a different expectorant. So I might do 2 different herbs where Angelica can kind of do it all in one. And then, constipation in general, but not if we take out the cold and flu aspect of it, you can use Angelica, archangelica for constipation. That if your child is struggling with it on a regular basis, you can use it as like a bitters to help kind of move gut motility, get that peristalsis moving, and help with having bowel movements. Some other herbs I might blend together with Angelica are mullein, fennel. Mullein specifically is another expectorant. Fennel is an expectorant, but it's also an antispasmodic to the digestive tract. Chamomile, catnip, both have that action as a carminative is what it's called. They're also antispasmodic. So when you use a bitter, you're encouraging gut motility. Sometimes too much gut motility can kind of end up in colic. So we would use herbs like chamomile to reduce inflammation, relax any spasming that might take place. Fennel is more antispasmodic. Same with catnip as well. Nettles and goldenrod. So nettles is more of a cleansing herb. It's a depurative. It's an anti-allergic. Super high in minerals, but I would tend to use like nettles on a post-viral recovery, just something to kind of help move the blood, move clearance. And then goldenrod, yeah, that's an anti-inflammatory. It also thins mucus secretions. So if there's that thick, sticky mucus in the sinuses or in the throat and lungs, we can use goldenrod to kind of thin that out a little bit, and then use the angelica to bring it up. So this is, the benefit of blending herbs together. Ultimately, working with children is actually one of my favorite things to do. I think mostly that the root of that is, as a child, this didn't exist in my reality. My parents did the best they could with what they had, and they gave me what they had access to, what they knew to use. And as time's gone on, thanks to the internet, one amazing benefit of the internet is that this information is available. Like there's no book that somebody has to go buy or waiting for it to come up on, some mainstream news site to say, this is the herb you use for a cough. People can kind of search out, like, what else can I do? What can I do? And that's kind of why we're putting this information out there, is to give people an option, something for them to look for, so that, this might be somebody's starting path. And then we have the parents that come in that have been giving their kids herbs since the beginning. So it's a passion of mine, because I didn't have it as a child. I wish it was in my life, but I know that there's a reason why it wasn't. And I'm so very grateful that I can offer this to my children for anything that they need. I would say when I first became an herbalist, I might have overdone it. I might have been giving herbs all the time. Now I'm kind of in this place of the lemniscate, this back and forth, this ebb and flow. I'm not always dosing my kids with herbs, and I'm not always giving them supplements. I kind of move in and I work with them, and then I move out and I kind of observe, and I also listen to them too. Listen to your children. That's an amazing point that I should have touched on earlier. Listen to your children, even the babies. My daughter recently had a cold, and I've been giving her, these little blends. I was giving her like echinacea, a little bit of thyme, chamomile, and what else? Oh, some mullein. So I was giving her these 4 herbs, and I have all my herbs individually, so I kind of drop. And I had her in my arms, and I was talking with her, and I was like, how about a little bit of thyme? She's like, uh-huh. She's not talking fully yet. She's got some words, and she fully understands us, which is amazing. I love it. And then I said, and some echinacea, and she goes, no way. That's her thing. No way. So at that point, I listened to it. I didn't put any echinacea in that time, and maybe she is expressing what her body needs in that moment. And I recommend listening to your children, what they need. And sometimes listening to our children is just, they don't like the taste, or they want to eat candy all the time. We can't listen to them fully all the time. We can't give them candy just because they don't want to eat their vegetables. However, in these moments when you're listening in, being intuitive, practicing like a stillness or a present moment, listen and see how they're responding. Listen to their body language. Like, see how they respond. Are they getting tense and tight when you bring an herb close to them? Are they relaxing and smiling? And this morning specifically, I made a cup of chamomile tea for Alma, and I gave it to her in a little dosage cup. And I said, do you want some chamomile? And she said uh-huh. And then her whole body just kind of like melted into me as I was giving her a little dose of chamomile tea. So yeah, you can tune into these things, and you can feel out how a child's body might respond to these herbs. So that is herbal medicine for children. I'm very grateful that it's an option out there, that there's something I can do. I like to spread that message to parents far and wide so that they know that there's something that they can do. If you like this podcast, please share with someone that might benefit or find it interesting. Like I said, if you know a parent that doesn't know about herbs or does know about herbs, feel free to share this. If you'd like to follow our work more closely, Kristin and I both offer one-on-one consultations. I have the dispensary here at Aaron's Empire in Esquimalt, British Columbia. Feel free to check out our website. It'll be in the description below. I won't even go. It's a long website address. So Kristin also has her practice, the Functional Medical Herbalist. She practices out of the dispensary. She also practices out in Souk. Also does online stuff. So if you're thinking, well, I'm not in that area, totally can do something online. That's another major advantage of the internet these days, is the reach is far and wide with practitioners. I'm looking at working with a practitioner that's down in Peru, for example. So you can connect to us through our websites, through our social medias, our email addresses. I had a doctor actually reach out to me a week ago asking, hey, I'm moving to the States. I love your podcast. I'm looking to expand my medical practice into herbal medicine. Where do I start? And so I responded to their email with my thoughts and what this person should be looking at. I look forward to your response if you're listening to this podcast. Feel free to click the links, email us, ask us questions. I hope all is well. Take care.